The future just keeps getting brighter for Petty GMS. If you've been watching the channel for a while, then you know that I've been high on Petty GMS ever since it was announced that Maury Gallagher was buying a stake in the team. Or really since they signed Erik Jones to drive the 43 car prior to 2021. But this team just keeps making all of the right moves. This week it was announced that Jimmie Johnson is going to be buying a stake in the team and running select races for them in 2023. And this is a huge deal for multiple reasons. So let's jump in and take a look at them. But first, trivia question of the week. Jimmie Johnson has competed in one Cup Series race running a number other than the 48. What number was it, and what race was it? Okay, first off, this is a huge vote of confidence for the team's future. Jimmie Johnson is not the kind of guy who's going to buy into a team just because he thinks it'll be cool to say he owns a piece of a Cup team. The man basically has no ego, which is one of the things that we all love about him. He doesn't need to say things like he owns a Cup team. If he is going to do this, then it means that he sees success in the team's future. Just look at the improvement of the 43 car this year with Erik Jones. Last year he had 6 top 10s and an average finish of 19.7. This year he has 3 top 5s, 13 top 10s, a win at the Southern 500, and an average finish of 16.3. Here's a crazy stat for you. Those 13 top 10s are the same amount of top 10s that he had in his final year at Joe Gibbs Racing in 2020. Yes, that was a really down year for him, but remember, a bad year at JGR is a great year at Petty over the last 20 years. I said at the beginning of this year that I thought Erik Jones would find victory lane at least once this year, and he did just that at Darlington. I said in my last video on Petty GMS that I think Erik Jones will find victory lane at least twice in 2023, and I'm sticking to that. The signing of Noah Gragson was also a huge move for the team. For as much of a lightning rod as Gragson may be, he was clearly the most Cup-ready driver in the Xfinity Series, and yes, that includes Ty Gibbs. The combination of Erik Jones and Noah Gragson is the most talented driver combination that any team carrying the Petty name has had in over a decade, and this time, they actually have the money and quality of equipment to take advantage of it. I don't think for a second that Jimmie Johnson doesn't see this. And now he's going to inject more capital into the team to invest even more in improvements. Then there's the fact that Jimmie Johnson will himself run in select races for the team in 2023. This would presumably be marquee events like the Daytona 500, the Coke 600, and the much anticipated All-Star race at North Wilkesboro, and maybe tracks he's historically enjoyed a lot of success at, like Martinsville and Dover. Now you may say that Johnson has never even sat behind the wheel of a Gen 7 car, let alone raced one, and he was also clearly in decline during his last 2 seasons. Well, okay, you're right. He probably won't win any races. Maybe Jimmie Johnson wants to win races as a race car driver, and we want to see him win races as fans, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're not talking about Jimmie Johnson's non-existent ego or nostalgia for fans who grew up with him like myself. We're talking about the growth of a race team. It almost doesn't matter where he ends up in the finishing order, as long as he's providing the feedback the team needs to improve. Jimmie Johnson is a 7-time Cup Series champion who has spent the last 2 years driving Indy cars and sports cars, and say what you want about his performance on road courses, but Jimmie Johnson was damn good on the ovals in IndyCar. The man knows how to climb into a car and make it go fast, and communicate how to make it go faster with the team. That sort of elite feedback will help the whole team improve. Not to mention, he's going to make Erik Jones and Noah Gragson better as drivers as well. Jimmie Johnson was winning championships when Jones and Gragson were in elementary school. The level of mentorship he can provide them is incredible. Plus, I think Jones has a similar enough personality to Johnson that they will click very well with each other. Gragson may have a much different personality, but he's a smart guy and knows that when Jimmie Johnson talks, he better be listening and hanging on every word. Now, I mentioned the capital that Johnson was going to be bringing to the team already, but not all of that is going to be coming out of his bank account. One thing that Petty GMS has done impressively well over the last year is attract corporate sponsors to their team in a time where that's actually a pretty difficult thing to do. Do you think Jimmie Johnson's presence at the team is more or less likely to attract the attention of more sponsors who will bring in more money? The answer is more. Johnson is one of the few people in racing who's almost universally loved and has a tremendous amount of influence. Again, by buying into the team, he's making a statement about his confidence in the team's future. If there is a business that was thinking about getting into NASCAR and just hadn't pulled the trigger on it, or wanted to get involved but was exploring options as far as which team to go with, this could tip the scales in Petty GMS's direction. Carvana has already committed to going with Johnson wherever he goes, so he's already brought in one corporate sponsor, and I'm sure there will be more to come. Then there is one little point of interest that may or may not end up amounting to anything. Petty GMS is currently affiliated with RCR as far as technical alliances go. Obviously, Jimmie Johnson has a very warm relationship with Hendrick Motorsports. Could that lead to a change in technical alliances in the future? It's not that I believe they're getting bad equipment from RCR. Their results this year would seem to disprove that idea right off the bat, but RCR also provides support for Trackhouse and Kaulig racing, two more up-and-coming teams. That means that RCR supports 3 organizations amounting to 6 additional cars to its own team, and they are currently exploring expansion of their own team, which will require them to focus more attention inward that may otherwise go to its satellite teams. Hendrick Motorsports currently supports JTG Doherty and Inspire Motorsports, amounting to 3 cars in addition to their own. Hendrick already has the maximum allowable 4 cars on its own team and has had 4 cars for more than 20 years, so in-house expansion isn't something that they plan on doing. So if RCR expands its own operations and continues to provide support for 6 additional cars, will the quality of support suffer? Maybe not, but it's a possibility that is at least worth considering. Meanwhile, we know the quality of support Hendrick is capable of providing likely won't suffer anytime soon. Finally, this is a big deal not just for Petty GMS, but for NASCAR as a whole. This clearly positions Jimmie Johnson to be the heir to Richard Petty. It's been 30 years since the last time Richard Petty took a green flag, but he's still one of the most prominent figures in the sport, and his continued presence has, I believe, been vital to the health of the sport. But the unfortunate reality is that he's 85 years old and won't be around forever. There will come a day when we no longer see him in the garage. Like the king himself, Jimmie Johnson holds the distinction of being a 7-time Cup Series champion. It's important for people who have that sort of legacy and significance to the history of NASCAR to be around and involved. Johnson can take up the mantle of Richard Petty and will be a worthy successor. I said before that Johnson is one of the few people in racing who is universally well liked. Well, Richard Petty is another one of those people. It's important for the person who succeeds the king to have that quality as well, and Johnson does have that. So this is huge and exciting news. I just keep getting more and more excited for the future of Petty GMS all the time. Let me know what you think in the comments, and if you haven't already, check out my video on the life lessons that can be learned from Jimmie Johnson's career. Thank you so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, and or share with a friend, and have a wonderful day.